I have the pleasure of introducing the hardest working socialist activist I know, the person who 2.5 years ago recruited me to Socialist Alternative, and the only person on the City Council who I feel comfortable calling a real leader, Councilmember Kshama Sawant.
Sisters, brothers, comrades, socialism is rising. We have shown here in Seattle that it is not only possible to elect us an open socialist in the belly of the capitalist beast, but it is also possible for a socialist to be re-elected. And we have done that with the entire political establishment united against us. We did so as unapologetic fighters for working people. We defeated an onslaught of corporate money. We countered the deceit by the corporate media. And we did so by, as others have said, raising not a dime of corporate money and yet raising nearly $500,000 of working people's donations to fuel this campaign. And we did so by building what is very likely the largest ever grassroots electoral campaign in the history of Seattle, with 600 volunteers. And we've knocked on 90,000 doors. And some of you here are probably here because one of our volunteers knocked on your door and informed you about this exciting new movement that is on the threshold of blossoming in Seattle. We united labor on our side with more than 30 unions endorsing our campaign. We united environmentalists, community activists, LGBTQ activists, Black Lives Matter activists, all of them around the banner of our independent working class campaign. Because you see, the working class can build transformative movements, can fight back, and can win. And socialists have to be the backbone of such transformative movements, offering ideas and organization to a new generation that is looking for fundamental change against the ever-expanding economic inequality, the misery of poverty wages, homelessness and the lack of affordable housing, systematic racism and police brutality, sexism and the attacks against women's rights, and the destruction of our planet through climate change. The political establishment, not just in Seattle, but also beyond, have been furious at our success on $15 an hour that we won last year, which is taking a slice out of their mega profits towards wages for gravely underpaid workers. The establishment is angry because we were successful in fighting against a program that would have raised the rents of 7,000 working class families by 400%. And some of you who fought against that program are right here in this room. And now the establishment is livid because we are exposing slumlords and we're fighting for rent control and affordable housing. Workers and our organizations, including organized labor, united, we can challenge corporate politicians and offer a genuine working class alternative. But that means That means being independent from corporate cash. It means being against right-wing Republicans who, incidentally, backed my opponent, who kept declaring her Democratic Party credentials. It means also being independent of the Wall Street-driven Democratic Party machine, which fought relentlessly against our campaign. And to further look at what the working class of Seattle has been able to achieve through everything we have done in the last 3 years, let's also look at what happened in city council races in general. We have had strong anti-establishment challengers in virtually every race, and the corporate media might want to dismiss that, but it is not a normal occurrence. It has happened after decades of complete absence, or at least virtually complete absence, of anti-corporate candidates. And yet we did see that establishment candidates won, but they won narrowly. So what is the lesson that we are to take from this? On the one hand, the fact that they had genuine grassroots challengers that allowed them only to win narrowly shows the potential that exists. But also the fact that they ended up winning, the fact that the establishment ended up winning in some of these races also shows that those grassroots challengers lacked a strong organization to fight for their campaign, to counter the strong opposition of the establishment and of business. The fact that I am a Socialist Alternative candidate for City Council meant that Socialist Alternative mobilized, not just incidentally or not just because we are passionate about these things, but because it was a conscious decision taken democratically by the membership of our organization that this was of paramount importance for the working class to win this campaign. And another observation to make, running as a Democrat, running not so clearly as an independent challenger, did not necessarily help many of the grassroots candidates because big business mobilized against them with the same ferocity that they mobilized against us. And that is why it is in our best interest to have a strong organization that is not only backing grassroots challengers, but taking it on as the primary task. There's also a question about the role for labor. The labor movement needs to stop endorsing establishment candidates and needs to start supporting pro-worker candidates. Imagine. The King County Labor Council delegation meets in this very hall. I am a delegate as well, and there are some delegates in this room as well. Imagine how events would have turned if Labor had endorsed John Grant against Tim Burgess and then taken every resource to fight against the proven corporate candidate on City Council. It could have been a very different result. But in addition to this, Labor also needs to run our own working class candidates independent of the corporate establishment, as Algier was saying. Most of all, we won because we are well organized around a set of ideas and programs that unambiguously stands with working people, the poor, youth, and people of color. We won with clear socialist ideas, and because we are a tightly knit organization, Socialist Alternative. And let me emphasize that working people are angry and wanting to fight back. So movements are needed to turn this anger into a real force. But for that, you also need an organization with a socialist strategy that is willing and able to mobilize labor, challenge unapologetically the establishment and their corporate backers. And you need the determination and skills of organized socialism, yes, even in a local race, and yes, even in a district race. And I wanted to thank everybody who put their energies into this campaign, both who are members of Socialist Alternative today and those who are on their way to becoming members of Socialist Alternative. Now we have an opportunity to use this platform to build movements of the working class and the oppressed while spreading socialist ideas. This struggle, as Tony said, this fight against capitalist domination, exploitation, and environmental degradation is an international one. Across the world, there have been protests, inspiring strike actions, and colossal movements against the politics of austerity. Globally, capitalists are trying to make us pay for a crisis that their system created. And we see ongoing wars and the largest ever migrant crisis that humanity has seen. And we've seen the horrific tragedies that have unfolded recently in Beirut and Paris. And all of this flowing from the dog-eat-dog logic of capitalism. The world is crying out for socialist solutions. Socialist Alternative stands in solidarity with the Committee for Workers International, a worldwide organization, as Tony said, with activists in over 50 countries, from Nigeria to Brazil to Greece to India and South Africa and beyond. We stand together on common political ideas informed by decades of international experience in the workers' movement. And now, in this generation, millions of working class people, young people, are asking again, what is socialism? It's very simple what socialism is. Socialism is a global society that delivers a high standard of living to all human beings in an environmentally sustainable manner. You know, every time, just to give you an aside, every time I say that, people say, well, that's not controversial. This would be a society that offers human beings that opportunity to live their lives to their fullest creative and joyous potential. But the controversy comes in here because we have to ask the question, how can such a society be attained? How can we actually bring that to reality? For that, we need a global economy where ordinary people have full democratic control over the key decisions that affect their lives. A society based on social justice, where discrimination on gender, race, sexual identification, and so on would have been relegated to the history books. A society where everybody receives a living wage, where there's high-quality healthcare and education for all, free education from kindergarten to college, decent pensions, good housing, and so on. A society where communities are based on solidarity and cooperation rather than plagued with fear and alienation, and perhaps most urgently of all, a society where we have ended the threat of climate catastrophe by rebuilding our infrastructure on a green basis, and we have the power, that future society, which would give us the power to, political power, to decide that the remaining fossil fuels are going to remain permanently in the ground. These democratic socialist changes are both necessary and achievable. However, as Bernie Sanders points out, we currently live in a society dominated by the oligarchy of the super rich. That is why his call for a political revolution against the billionaire class has had such an electrifying effect on millions of people. At the first Democratic presidential debate, he declared, what democratic socialism is about is saying that it is immoral and wrong that the top 1/10 of 1% in this country owns almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%. Sanders is giving voice to the enormous and deep anger which exists because the political process is completely and utterly dominated by corporate interests, where cuts to social programs and attacks to workers' rights are seemingly endless, where structural racism and sexism remain entrenched, and because no decisive measures are being taken to address global warming. But underlying all of this is a diseased and decaying social system of capitalism. But how do we take this on? Poll after poll shows that people under 30 support socialism and capitalism in roughly the same numbers. And now we have seen that support for socialism leads over capitalism by 12 percentage points within Democratic Party supporters nationally. This increased acceptance of socialism is the product of the unmasking of capitalism over the last 8 years since the crisis supposedly ended, and a new wave of social struggle has broken out nationally and internationally. And the social power of working people is the main force that can galvanize all these various strands of struggle and can push back decisively against the corporate agenda in favor of the needs of humanity. But this social struggle needs to be combined with building a political force for the 99%. And we can see the potential for this. Sanders' campaign raised $28 million, roughly the same as what Hillary has raised, but it is on the basis of refusing corporate donations. 650,000 people have donated to the Sanders campaign. This shows how much of an opening there is for independent working class politics. But this model of working class politics is ultimately, fundamentally incompatible with the framework of the Democratic Party apparatus, which is dominated by corporate money and the neoliberal agenda. And that is why we have to raise the question of an independent mass party of and for working people, so that we can fight for our interests in the here and now, while linking it to a socialist transformation of society. And in Seattle, we've seen this in a live manner. In Seattle, when offered a clear alternative to corporate democratic politics, the rank and file of the Democratic Party was won over to support an open socialist, despite the anger it generated among the establishment of the Democratic Party. And some of you who played that role are right here today. And so, my sisters and brothers, we will continue fighting in Seattle. We will continue fighting for every possible improvement in the standards of living of working people. Every possible progressive change away from racism and sexism in Seattle. We will be fighting for a tenants' bill of rights. We will be fighting for fair scheduling for all workers. And we will be fighting to tax the rich. But more immediately, please join me this coming Monday at 10 a.m. at City Hall. You must have seen these blue flyers. Make sure you take one of these handbills with you. Because we need your help to put pressure on the City Council for a few tangible gains immediately. One, to pave the way to unplug Comcast so that we can Comcast, and there's instantaneous response. So the way to unplug Comcast is to begin now by funding a pilot program for municipal broadband. But we need you to pack City Hall so that the council members who are both afraid of and beholden to Comcast will hear where the balance is tilted. We need you to help take homelessness in this rich city seriously. But most of all, we need you on Monday to help create momentum to win 12 weeks paid parental leave for all city employed workers. If we can win this Monday, then it will pave the way to fight for and win 12 weeks paid parental leave for all workers in Seattle. And keep in mind, what we are fighting for is for all workers regardless of gender. But at every step that we fight for these victories in the here and now, we have to link them to a much broader vision. And we have to say very clearly, we are not here to make peace with the domination of the billionaire class and just be happy with a few crumbs. And also, let's be clear, even to carry out measures that you and I might consider basic, like progressive taxation, like rebuilding the nation's infrastructure on green lines, all of this actually means completely breaking from the stranglehold of Wall Street and the biggest corporations. And this will require, as Jeremy was saying, this will require more than breaking up the big banks or restoring the Glass-Steagall Act, although such measures will certainly be positive steps. It will entail bringing the big banks into public ownership, along with the big energy companies and the other key parts of the economy. And just look at climate change and the oil lobby as a particular example. Just 90 companies are responsible for around 2/3 of carbon emissions in human history. 90 companies, and they have so much power that they have wielded a veto on any serious attempt to end global warming. So the question that stares us in the face is, how are we going to transform our rhetoric for green transformation of the global society without taking those corporations under democratic public ownership? Global crisis must be faced through global solidarity, and creating a viable socialist future for the people of the planet based on the utmost democratic participation of ordinary people like ourselves is the paramount challenge of our times. And the moment is now. We must get organized. Join me in dedicating our lives to building the socialist movement. If you are already a member of Socialist Alternative, challenge yourself to be more involved, to build the organization, to politically educate yourself further about socialist ideas. If you haven't yet joined us, please consider joining us tonight. Fill an application to join. Donate to our cause, to your cause. Study our reading program. There is no better way to learn our methods, the methods that have produced these victories, the methods that Jeremy said are so effective inside the labor movement, than getting involved yourself. And just a note on donation, if you haven't donated tonight, I urge you to donate, because Gabriella Duncan, who issued a challenge that Jeremy met, is an important thing to consider. Gabriella Duncan is an amazing activist. She has been homeless for a long time. She lives in her vehicle. And I can hardly think of a protest action of something that was of real relevance that she has not been at. And today she has gone above and beyond that by donating money that she does not have to this cause. And if you haven't, then you absolutely have to match her. Where do we go from here? Join me on Monday. The meeting starts at 10 o'clock. Come earlier because we need to hear your voice in public comment. Let's pack the hell out of City Hall. Let's turn the inauguration ceremony on January 4th in City Hall into a rally for socialism, a rally for high-quality mass transit, for affordable housing, for rent control. After that, join us on February 27th for a conference of socialists, labor, and activists against racism, for gender justice, and to discuss concretely our strategies for 2016 to build towards the change that we all need. We have showed that when we fight, when the working class fights, gets organized, we can win. We got elected, we won 15, we were up against a prepared and angered establishment in this election, and we still won with our ideas, our sacrifice, and our well-organized approach. We can win far more going forward, but only if each one of us takes this extremely seriously, not as something that we're going to do in a little free time here and there, but as regardless of what jobs we have, we all need jobs to pay our bills, but regardless of what we do for our livelihoods, this should be the paramount task in our lives, building the socialist movement. Everything we win, the capitalists will try to take back from us. The final victory, the socialist transformation of society, is absolutely critical to wipe away exploitation, oppression, war, and poverty once and for all. So I appeal to you, join me in fighting for a better world. Join Socialist Alternative. Solidarity.